Welcome to Excel in Retirement, the show that gives you the information and motivation you need to excel in your retirement. Your guide is David Treese, a financial advisor who shares his expertise to help you achieve greater peace of mind about your finances today and have the information you need to create a plan for your future so that you can excel in retirement. I'm the host of today's show, Andy Traub, and today David's going to speak to us about the importance of and the impact of stewardship as it relates to interest rates. And they have been volatile, and the history of interest rates is long and varied. So today we're going to talk about how they impact your finances, your peace of mind, and how to take advantage when they're up and how to take advantage when they're down. So David, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Andy. I'm excited to be here.
Let's talk about, and I don't know if you know this, but my parents' interest rate on their house was like 20%.
Yeah, crazy.
And I heard a fun story about my grandmother that she funded her retirement by essentially loaning out money to her kids. She had 11 kids for their houses. So everyone basically used the bank of grandma. And she was generous enough to loan them money at, 10%,
Yeah.
which we laugh at now because we're like, grandma's doing well,
Yeah.
But if they went somewhere else, it would have been more. So
Right.
she was literally like a lower interest. She was like your favorite credit union. You know what I mean? I'm not. I think she did that because she loved her kids, but also, it was a steady income. So no, we're not advocating that grandmas do that, but it reminded me of there's certain interest rate climates that a lot of people don't remember or don't know about because people are freaking out that it's 6% or 7%. It's like, well, it used to be 18. And,
Yes.
so let me ask you on a day-to-day basis as an advisor, or maybe week to week or month to month, or how do interest rates impact your conversations with clients?
Yeah, I hear those stories quite a bit from clients about the early 80s and high double-digit interest rates. And so there's a lot of opportunities that happen when interest rates go up, especially for folks that are retired. There's assets, whether it's CDs, bonds, annuities, that can be highly favored when interest rates go up, and so forth, that we've been able to take advantage of the last few years.
So that's an interesting thing because I think that there's we all are subject to the media, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna hear things even if you don't get a newspaper every day or watch news every day. If you turn it on at all, if interest rates go down, they generally are excited. If they
Yes.
go up, they generally are not excited. And I think a lot of people think that way. So just as a practical perspective, if interest rates went up, 4% to 10%, right? Who would that be good for or best for right now?
If interest rates went up 4 to 10% right now, it would be great for people that have cash, that have savings, which is typically skewed more towards the retired demographic or the folks over 55.
Right.
And we got used to, for so many years, never having interest rates this high because the government essentially fed consumerism because when
Yeah.
interest rates are low, it allows us to be able to finance cars and finance homes, and even credit
Yeah.
cards cost less. And so we're able to get that product today rather than having to save up for it. And so interest rates higher benefits more mature, older people typically that are more established, and lower interest rates tend to help folks that are younger or people that have debt. And
Yeah.
so the government is normally on the side of the table of investors. And so they also, it's kind of, I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth, but in my view, the government's normally on the side of the table of investors like you and me, trying to keep interest rates low so that car manufacturers here in Spartanburg, we have BMW that's manufactured here. So it keeps our friends at BMW in jobs making cars. And so there's a demand for them, and it keeps people in jobs building houses, and there's a trickle down. But the tragedy was the government printed so much money during COVID-19 and the pandemic and flooded the economy with all kinds of new money that it sent inflation up to 40-year highs. And so you really can't have a conversation about interest rates without talking about inflation. And so the government raised interest rates to try to combat those higher prices, because there was a stat, and I can look this up to put in the show notes, but I believe it was in 2023 that said 57% of Americans cannot put their hands on $1,000 if they needed to. And
Wow.
so when the price of eggs goes up really high, like I think I read 60% at one point during the pandemic, that really hurts folks that are living paycheck to paycheck. And so the
Yeah.
government switched sides of the table of those people from trying to help investors to trying to help those people that are struggling by raising interest rates to bring down the cost of things. And so we could debate probably till night about whether they were successful in doing that, whether
Yeah.
prices are down. But that's a little bit of the backstory there.
Yeah, and that's actually there's even a more recent article from January 23rd of 2025 that nearly 60% of Americans don't have enough money to put away to handle common financial emergencies. And that's really what that's about.
Yes.
It's the liquidity, right? And
Really,
so
it's incredibly sad. I think like resources like this and just having conversations about things like this and bringing awareness to this can help a lot of people, Andy, with understanding how to not be in that situation in the future. You know, insanity is just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And if we're caught in that trap, we have to figure out a way to go up to the next level or to leverage ourselves up, whether
yeah.
it's improving our skill set or whatever we can do to earn more money to not be in that position.
Yeah, or just have a different habit or perspective on money. I
Yes.
mean, I think
Yes.
that there's a, when I go wash my hands, I'm not trying to collect water. I'm trying to wash my hands and let it keep going. But there's other times when I'm thirsty and I need water and I'll put my hands out. I'm going to try to collect the water. Water is touching my hands, so what's the purpose, right? And I think some people have a thing with money, and they're like, oh, if I touch money, it's supposed to just keep going through my hands. Like
Right.
money's meant to just move through. It's
Right.
meant to sort of just move. And other people are like, no, no, no. Like money's meant to be collected and held and saved. And the reality is it's both. But some people just never ever get in the habit of like, no, you need to hold on to some, you
Yes.
know? And
Yes.
and that, most of the time that comes from your family of origin.
Yes.
But the reality is a lot of that also comes from, what neighborhood do you live in? There's an expectation of, you can't kind of drive that car. And one of the things that my wife and I recognized when we moved to this area, Tennessee, we've lived here about 11 years now, is we're like, there's no old cars.
Hmm.
Like where we used to live, we used to live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and you'd see a car that, and I don't mean just like old as in the classic. I just mean like we don't see a lot of rundown cars
Yeah.
because people just kind of take care of their stuff more, or there's a higher expectation of like, I see a lot of cyber trucks around here, like, my friend's like, I never see any cyber trucks, and I'm like, I see a ton.
Nothing screams disposable income like a
Oh,
Cybertruck.
yeah, very disposable, very disposable.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing says stainless steel trash can
Hmm.
like this. Anyway, I've never been in one.
Bulletproof stainless steel trash can.
Bulletproof, mostly. Yeah, right. By the way, have you ever been in one?
I have not.
I
Have you?
haven't either, and it's
Yeah.
funny. I make fun of it, and I totally want to get in one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My
So
my my 3-year-old likes pointing them out. We point them out, and she thinks they look mean. She says
they
she
do.
doesn't like them because they look mean.
I do think they look mean. I agree with
Yeah.
her. I agree
Yeah.
with her. So one of the things I want to encourage those who are listening right now to do, if you feel like, you know what, I feel good about my finances and how I approach interest rates or even savings. If you have, I call them offspring, but kids, and they're in their 30s, into the 40s, or their 20s, or whatever it might be, maybe in 50s, right? And you feel like, you know what, they don't have a perspective on money that I do. And I think a lot of people in Gen X, which is kind of mine, we've had it pretty good. We've had a pretty good, it's a couple bumps, but we've had a pretty good financial world with the stock market and interest rates and things like that. Obviously, there's some major hiccups with the housing crisis and COVID and things like that. But I would encourage you, if you can hear this conversation, this might be a good reminder for you to send this episode to them and say, hey, let's get lunch and talk about this. Because if you're not sure if your kids have $1,000 in savings, then they probably don't. I think that I want my kids to grow up and be able to, thrive on their own. I've
Yes.
got a 17, 16, and 14-year-old, but I'm going to continue to stay involved, and I don't want to supplement those things necessarily. We're like, I'm going to put money in the account, but I want them to have that savings, and they would not if I didn't do it for them right now. We've talked about that in the past. So I want to ask you, David, when people are experiencing these interest rate changes, What sort of conversations do they need to be having with you to like not panic or take advantage of things? So, the interest rates are going down right now, as
Yes.
in late 2025. But sometimes interest rates will adjust by a quarter percent or things like that. And I think sometimes people begin to panic one way or the other. So, what should people maybe not be doing when they see interest rates changing? And then maybe what are some hidden things that people didn't know they could do? Kind of talked about this pre-show that they should be doing, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know you could do that."
Yeah. Um, I think something to be aware of, number one, is I've observed in my 14 years working in financial services that when people are coming in the office, they're often coming in the office with concerns from something that happened 3 or 4 months ago, and
Mm.
it's just now getting to them, to their awareness.
What is
And
that like? What's an example of? And I'm kind of getting the vibe like it's too late, like that ship has passed.
yeah, right. So
Like,
I
what
mean,
does that look like?
people, there's studies about loss, and people fear losing money more than they do gaining money, or they're more prone to act on fear. But I think when the market gets really volatile, and then let's say it's volatile 3 or 4 months ago, and then everything is calm and the market's going up, and we're 4 months down the road and the storm's passed, people are coming in talking about the volatility 3 or 4 months ago and wanting to
Interesting.
take action on that. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, yeah, what we should do today is get ready for the next volatility. That
Right.
volatility is gone. What can we do
Yeah.
because it's going to come again?
Yeah.
Just like anything in life, you're going to have problems, and it's not when, it's just, or it's not if, it's just when. And so that's the first thing. But some things that you can do is be aware of what's going on. And so I write a weekly newsletter. I've been writing newsletters for over 10 years, and every Wednesday we send that out. And I would love to have you register for that. There's no cost, but we're just keeping people informed about these things that are going on in real time so that you can take action on them. For example, we just recently bought a home. We needed a bigger house. We'd needed a bigger house for a long time, and I put it off, put it off. When we're walking around the house with the realtor, I have an app on my phone with a mortgage calculator, and I'm
Yeah.
calculating the
Absolutely.
payment of what this house is going to cost me. And then if I put this down on it, it's going to cost this. And I'm literally walking around the house. My wife is looking at all the furnishings, and I'm looking at the money, trying to figure out whether I think this
There
can
are
work.
so many people that relate to that of like, yeah,
Yes.
you're thinking about where to put the dining room table or that chair, and I'm just like, what's my payment?
Yes,
You
yeah.
know?
So, President Trump has been very vocal about getting interest rates lower, and the Fed chair Jerome Powell, his term is up in May, I believe it is, next year, and so he's going to more than likely appoint someone that's going to be accommodative to his wishes with lowering interest rates. So I really think in the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see some opportunities for folks like me that have bought a mortgage and are paying 6.5% to be able to refinance that.
Mm.
And we just have to run the numbers, whether we do that ourselves or we have a trusted partner at a bank or something that can run the numbers and figure out the cost to close that, and whether it's worthwhile and how long you need to stay in the home to make it pay off. But that is something we want to be aware of. Andy and I were talking before we came on about the first loan I ever had on a house. We had a car payment at the time, and the bank wanted us to refinance the car loan to get the payment lower
Interesting.
to have less monthly bills, basically. It was the same amount of money we owed, but they just wanted the payment lowered. And of
Yeah.
course, we just paid on the regular schedule and paid it off when we were going to. But that's something you can do. So if and I've heard people come into the office and heard people talking recently about paying 10% on used cars that they financed and stuff. And I don't think it's that high now, but it may be appropriate now to look at refinancing some of those loans to try to save yourself some money. And you could take that same payment. Cool thing you could do is take that same payment that you've been paying and take that. So if it's costing you $900 and you're able to get the payment to $600, you could take that $300 and put it in a savings account and help you build up a savings account and an emergency fund if you don't have it. Just
Right.
redirect those dollars.
Yeah, and I mean, I literally was in the finance office of a credit. There's a local credit union in our town that for some reason just has the best car loan rates. I don't know why they do, but they do. And I was in there, and it was like a $12,000 loan or something for my recent Honda Pilot, and I said, you guys just have the best rates, and I don't know how you do it, but I appreciate it. And I got my last car with you guys. And she said, oh, when did you get that? And I said, about a year ago. And I had missed the refinance window by 3 days, right?
Mm,
And it would have saved me, $20 a month, but I'll take $20 a month. And the point is, I just didn't even know you could do that. I didn't know that, and it makes sense, if banks are always happy to loan you money, right? But yeah, I think it's just being aware of those opportunities. Let me ask you this as it relates to interest rates and people being prepared for emergencies. Do you have conversations with people about home equity lines of credit as an opportunity for an emergency fund if they have to, or if they have to use a credit versus, in addition to their cash, if it doesn't cost them anything? You ever
right.
talk to people about that?
I do. Have had a conversation recently with a lady. I hate debt as much as the next person, and the only debt I have is my mortgage right now, and hope to keep it that way. But a lot of times, it can be helpful to have that home equity line just for emergencies. And
100%. Yeah.
generally, who we're having those conversations with are people that are not well funded for retirement.
Yeah.
So if someone doesn't have enough savings to cover things, and there could be a possibility that they need more money, if they have a lot of equity in their house, that can be a great place to go to. And I've also had a call with a banker last week. I had this lady come in and was asking questions about reverse mortgages, and I'm not
Really.
that keeps coming up in continuing education. And there's a lot of stuff out there about for folks that are underfunded, and it seems like the government has come in and cleaned that up and not allowed it to be as predatory as it originally was. And
Yeah.
so that can be a place for people that are not well funded for retirement too, that own their home and have
Yeah.
some equity there.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the government stepped in to clean some of that up, because it
Yeah,
was, I think when it started, just an absolute Wild West, and some crazy stories came out of that.
right.
And yet, from a mathematical perspective, um, it sort of made sense. Like, oh, you have money you can't spend because you have this asset.
Right.
What if someone could, for a fee, you use that money, and at the end you don't have the house
Yeah.
because you don't need it because you're living on the streets of gold. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But it just seemed like such a negative experience for so many people.
I think
Um,
what it was, the banker was telling me last week when I talked to her about it, that originally they were allowing people to take 95% of their value out. And so some of
wow.
those people did not have the money to pay the property tax and the insurance and so forth on the home. And so they were getting repossessed. And
Well,
she
yeah,
was
and then
saying,
if you're sorry to interrupt, but if your value fluctuates by
right,
10%,
right,
then do you owe them the money? You know what I
right,
mean?
you're in a bad spot.
Anytime you hear like something in the 90s as it relates to
Yes.
finance, it's
Yes.
usually not a good thing,
Right.
because you think about when, I'm trying to remember what year it was. Maybe it was around 9/11 or whatever, but like when we bought our first home, maybe 2002 or 3, but it's when they would it was a housing crisis. It was like
Yeah.
you could get a house for $500.
Right. Right.
Like, what do you mean? No, like literally, it's five. I mean, my first house, they're like, we need $500. What else? That's it. Okay. When's my first payment? You don't have to pay the first month. You get it. And I'm just like, how is this a good thing? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So, it's that's good to hear that.
Right.
As people are thinking about interest rates, as they hear about them in the news, what would be your encouragement if someone is like, I want to use interest rates to my advantage, um, and I feel good about my finances. If you were to meet with someone who said, I have, half my money I can't touch and half my money I can touch, and I've got half my house paid off, and I've got half of my car paid off, and they're on both sides of the fence of what interest rates could do for them.
Right.
Um, what would you say? Okay, well, here's the thing: you're kind of in the middle, right? You can use it for your advantage, or it could also hurt you. What's some parting advice for just some really practical things people should do as it relates to interest rates? And I'm going to start with, I think, one you already said, which is have the conversation before you have to have the conversation.
Right.
Don't
Right.
don't don't call David after things have gone crazy.
Yes.
Call you now. Go to clientsexcel.com and reach out to David to have that conversation now, to be prepared, because when interest rates change, you want to be prepared to take advantage of that, right?
Yes. Yes. Couple things come to mind there. When the interest rates went up, I went to the bank and I was like, you're not paying me anything on my savings account that's sitting here. I need to make more interest on it. And they were like, okay, well, we can open this other savings account and put 4 or 5%. I think it was 5% at the time. They said it's a variable rate, so it'll fluctuate. And so a lot of times what it's easy to do is just forget about that. And so you forget that money is sitting there, and maybe the rates go down to 2 or 3%. You're not making anything on it. And in our 3 rolls of money process that I developed a few years ago, I talk about it in our book. We have green money, which is our bank and liquid money. And in a perfect world, we're going to maintain 6 to 9 months of bill paying money in there so that we can avoid credit cards when emergencies come up, and we can avoid having to sell our investments at a potentially bad time and have a fire
Right.
sale on those. But if we get more than a year of bill paying money, and especially if we're not earning an interest rate on it, a good interest rate on it, we've got lazy money. Do you know what lazy money is, Andy?
Well, we've talked about it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
So
not
lazy,
doing much.
right? It's not doing much.
Not
So
doing much.
if you got $100,000 sitting in the bank and inflation is 5%, or even 2%, inflation is 2%, and a year from now it's going to buy $98,000 worth of goods. And so we want to be cognizant of that so that we can put that money to work instead of just having it there aimlessly. There are certainly reasons for having money in cash, and there can be valid reasons for that. But unless we have a methodology for what we're doing, we don't want to just complacently leave the money there.
Yeah, and I think it's thinking about the money that's being lazy, and I hope my kids are okay with this if they hear the episode. It's like if I have 2 of my kids who are working really hard, and I've got one sort of just sitting there watching the other 2 work. It's like, no, we're all in the team. We're all part of the family. All of us need to be doing our part. And when you
Yes.
have lazy money, that's not neutral. It's not like, oh, it's not doing anything bad because it's doing nothing. No, if things continue to cost more and it's not growing, then it is hurting you, right?
Yeah.
You're carrying the weight of that. It's not carrying its own weight. And
Andy, I'm having
so it's a mind shift that your money should be working for you. And it either can be working for you by it's liquid and available because you need it right now, or it's working for you as in it's growing,
yeah.
right? Or it's got a tax advantage to it. So looking at your money through that lens is very important. I know that David would love to sit down and talk with you about this. If you're a current client, then certainly reach out if there's a change in your finances that you need to talk about. But David, I know your heart and your mission is to help people make wise financial decisions, to be great stewards of what God has given them. They're holding it for a time, and they have a responsibility to do good things with it. And as unexciting as it can seem at times, interest rates are a part of that. And so we
Yes.
appreciate you breaking that down for us. And again, our encouragement to you is to be proactive. Don't wait for the panic of, oh no, interest rates are going to change by this much. Be proactive and put a plan together and get the guidance you need. And that's why David does what he does, is to give you the guidance that you need. So, as usual, David, very practical advice. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
And
man.
again, if folks want to reach out to David, they can do so at clientsexcel.com. David, I'll give you the last word.
You were causing me to have a little PTSD, man. There was no lazy people in my household growing up that didn't go out and do the yard work. We were out there every Saturday morning. My dad was always an entrepreneur, and he had the idea to start. He wanted to get these holly bushes, and he wanted to sell them for some reason, and he wanted to start a nursery. And so our backyard was sloped down to this wooded area. So he took this black tarp, that landscaping
Yeah,
tarp that you put
yeah,
down so the weeds don't come through it.
yeah.
And he had, I guess it was hundreds of these holly bushes out there. And we would have to get out there on that black tarp in the hot North Carolina summer on that hill and like pull the weeds. It was one of the most miserable things ever. But
I mean, I was
yeah,
just upset about the holly because those aren't,
yeah, they
you
stick you.
don't hug a holly,
Yes, you
right?
don't. You
Those
don't.
things are
Yeah, they
not
stick
kind.
you. That's my
Um,
mind immediately went to that when you were saying that. But
yeah,
yeah,
I would have maybe have picked something different to
yeah,
grow.
yeah. They're beautiful bushes. I think I have some outside here, but yeah,
Yeah,
I don't want to do that ever again.
that's right. So let's be good stewards of what we're growing and work
Yeah.
hard and no lazy money and no lazy
Yes,
kids. So
that's it.
uh,
That's it. Teaches you good work ethic.
absolutely. Well, David, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy. Have a good one.